welcome back to You Crack Me Up. It's Dr. A and Dr. B, the migraine doc. That's him.
Specific ATX as I see over here.
Yeah, if you're watching us on YouTube, we now have the option to put little titles in our video. Brandon's pointing at them.
Pointing to them right now.
Yep. So I put my handle in mine, in case you just want to give me a little follow, go for it.
I have to ask you, do you feel weird actually using like your full like doctor name when you meet people? So I love even when I sign off on my email, I'm like Dr. B. Like I just leave it at that. I don't I feel like my name is so vanilla anyway. Dr. Brown. I'm like, oh, that feels like an old man when I say that. I'm like, oh, it's Dr. B. I'm just Dr. B. That's what my patients call me. I'm like, I'm just gonna stick with that.
I've always been Dr. Alex, but I will say Dr. A. I have patients, but patients will just call me Alex too. But oftentimes, if it's somebody that like has no idea who I am, they think I'm a guy. Because Alex, they'll associate Alex with being a male, and then they're like, this doesn't happen so much anymore, but it happened a lot when I was first in practice, and they'd be like, oh, I could tell I caught them off guard. And they're like, you're the doctor? They think I'm like the assistant or like the office manager or something, and I'm like, yeah, that's me. Hello.
Hi, Dr. Alex. Hi, that's me.
Yep, exactly.
I'm sure you get that all the time. Mine is always, I'm way bigger in person than people are like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize you're so tall. I'm like, yeah, I know. Hear it all the time.
I'm a big dude.
Every single time.
Big dude.
One iPhone screen tall on an iPhone screen. So whatever you want to correlate that to.
Huh?
One iPhone screen. I would take up the entire iPhone screen on one iPhone, basically. I'm being a dork. Just let it go.
That one's over my head. Maybe listeners got it.
If you put me on the iPhone screen, I'm one iPhone screen tall.
Aren't we all?
No, I mean, it depends on again, if we were both inside of an iPhone screen, where would you be next to me?
Well, it depends on the Zoom. I think that's why I don't get it. Anyway, okay. We're going to jump in here.
See you on the next.
We do have cool stuff to talk about today.
Yes.
What we're going to talk about today is called the sunk cost fallacy. This is actually an economic term, business term, financial term, and we can apply it to our everyday life and specifically our health. Brandon, are you familiar with sunk cost fallacy?
Yes, as a business owner, I am very aware of this because it is super easy to get stuck into certain things because you feel like I've already, again, based on my understanding, I've sunk this amount of money into it. I just have to stick it through. Basically, I cannot change, go any other direction, go somewhere from here, start anew, hire someone else, do something. It's like, I've already sunk all this cost. Let me just keep riding this ship as it sinks like the Titanic, basically.
Yeah, basically that's a perfect description of what the term is. I
understand that because you're just like, oh, I spent so much money with this person, but I don't feel like it's delivering what I wanted. I'm just going to keep doing it anyway, I guess,
Yeah, exactly. It's like I bought these tickets for only $10 and I really don't feel like going, so I'm just going to stay at home versus, man, those tickets cost me $200. I've had the worst day ever and I'm also getting sick, but they cost me so much money. I'm just going to go.
I got to go. Yep.
Yep.
It's another way of looking at it.
And I think this term kind of sums up one of the biggest lies that impacts somebody's ability to heal. And I think the reason is because of how you just summed it up and how we can what's the word I'm looking for? Extrapolate it to our health and just like health decisions. It's really easy to make emotional decisions versus actual decisions based on logic or evidence because of how we feel. So it's like, I've sunk this much money into this treatment or this doctor or this protocol or with this much for my insurance. I've already met my deductible, so I'm just going to keep going to do this. Yeah. Or I'm already this far into this treatment plan, even though I'm way worse. So I'm just gonna keep going. It's kind of this idea that even though what you've already paid or the time you've invested or the money you've invested cannot be recovered, you're still letting those past decisions dictate your future decisions. And so it's not just money, it's also time. And we get to this place where it's like we have all these like decision making points, right? Like a fork in the road. Well, I could either do this or this, but we tend to keep doing the same thing over and over again based on the past and how much we feel we've already invested.
And I know with this stuff, especially on my side, like I don't know necessarily that I would relate to this. I think more of our listeners are probably going to relate to it on the healthcare side, maybe in their life, like you were talking about something that they've done or spent money on. For me, it's more of my business of just the fact of it's, I've had talks with you and other docs that we worked with and other entrepreneurs and even our coaches of just like, sometimes it's unfortunately the cost of playing the game. Like we have to figure these things out. And I feel like with most things, we're not saying that there's a absolute right or wrong to this. Sometimes with stuff, it needs time. Like one of the things I always try to make sure that my patients understand, I know Alex does the same, is like, hey, there is going to be a aspect of time that's going to be required with the type of care that we're doing. Like the reason I make the recommendations that I do is because I know it's going to take a certain length of time for you to start showing changes and for your nervous system to stabilize in order for me to feel like it's okay to start seeing you less and less to the point where maybe you come ever so often or we don't see you as often anymore. So when it comes to that stuff, it's like I can understand how frustrating it can be, but also you have to understand that, hey, you have to be able to give things time. Like I always try to talk about that of like with a lot of things, it sort of has, unless I'm working with someone, they have a really great track record and they're saying, hey, this is something that's going to take 12 to 18 months, then I know I'm going to have to strap in for 12 to 18 months and do what is necessary and hopefully have weighed out all my options in order to go that route. But for a lot of things, I sort of have like a 6-month rule for the most part. It's about a 90 to 180 day rule, essentially, of like, man, if we're not seeing the tide turn, if we're not seeing momentum going in that direction, then like, why do I keep doing this? Why do I keep going down that same route? And I can't tell you how many times I see patients do this or can tell that somebody's sort of on the fence about maybe coming to see me, but they're still kind of with this. And, you're not quite sure if you want to take that risk of coming to see me. So then maybe you back out and it's like subconsciously you're like, well, I'll just keep doing what I'm doing. Maybe this time it'll be different. Like you've heard this. Everyone has heard this. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. Like if you do that, the result that is going to come from that. And I know we get into comfortability and familiarity. Like, hey, this is what I know. This is where I've gone. I know where that office is. I know who the front desk person is. I know the staff. I know the building layout to get there. I know what it's going to be like. I know what they're going to say. But when we get stuck in that mundane flow of things, it's not necessarily the thing that's serving you the best. Like, I think we have to have better metrics when we look at this of like, well, then what is it that we're trying to work towards? Because if you keep going, I had somebody the other day on one of my TikToks talk about having to go to now a third neurologist because the last two she's been gaslit by. They're ignoring her and they're telling her that there's no way that she can be in that much pain. You can't be in that much pain. Like that's the whole coming at people when you ask them what's their pain on a scale of 1 to 10, which is why I never really ask that question. Yes, it's on our paperwork, but we don't really ask that because in all honesty, some people are going to say a 15. They're going to say a 50. They're going to say 1,000 because they've never felt like pain like this before ever. And they don't know what it is that they can do. Yet doctors just live in this. What's your pain on a scale of 1 to 10? 10, really? 12, really? I don't even think that's like, there's no connection there. It's just like, I'm taking stuff and I'm doing this and I'm looking at this and I'm giving it there. And I know not everyone is this way, but I've just seen this from so many patients where they're frustrated because that's the situation. But the problem is the same thing that you're talking about of this sunk cost. So it's like, but I've already spent, and again, cost can be a lot of different things. Cost can be time, cost can be money, cost can be your energy. Like there's so many things that you can put into that you're like, well, I've already done so much here. I can't go back now. And
right.
Also, you might have these weird things. I don't want to offend them. I don't want to offend Dr. Alex. Like, I don't want to do this. And it's like, I tell patients too, if you don't feel like this is working, you're not offending me. My ultimate and end all be all goal is I'm here to help serve and take care of you. And if I'm not doing that, then let's figure out what's going to do that. And I didn't used to be that way. It took a long time. It's very hard to say that. It's much easier now. Back in the day, there's no way I could have accepted that because like I got to figure it out.
Right. Yeah. Communication over everything, right? Communication and transparency is so important when you're taking care of people, because if something's off and a patient's feeling it, the chances are, I mean, you and I are also feeling that too. We're pretty self-aware. And so sometimes a conversation just needs to be had, and sometimes it's a goal. It's a goals issue. It's a time issue, whatever the case. And so there just needs to be communication there around that. I do want to dive into something that you said about, putting a plan together and having a plan. I think that we're going to talk about that in the latter half of this episode, about how to combat. Did I say that word correctly? I feel like I just put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
I think
how to combat, how to fight back. How to fight back.
Fancy little pictures on the side.
I'm in my clinic. I know. No. So in the latter half of this episode, we're going to talk about the points to kind of fight back against the sunk cost fallacy and maybe make different decisions that are more to our benefit. And I, going along the trajectory and timeline and things like that. I do want to throw in here things that kind of are comorbid or happen alongside this sunk cost fallacy, because we do have these cognitive biases and these things that really drive our decision making that we're not aware of, right? And so two really big ones are going to be our commitment bias and loss aversion. And commitment bias is really just, you don't want to go against your word. You don't want to let yourself down. You don't want to be a hypocrite. You don't want to say you're doing something and you've put all this time into it and all this money to it and all this energy into it, and you've told everybody about it and you've been really excited about it, only to find that it may not be the correct course going forward.
And so this is the 100th time that it's been that, and you're just like, golly, again?
Right. And so those feelings of failure, inadequacy, injustice, rejection, hopelessness, all those feelings pop up. And so a lot of times it's easier to just continue going on the sinking ship than have to sit with that either for the first time or the 100th time. And the second one, loss aversion, I think is probably one of the biggest one that drives so many emotional decisions that we are not aware of. Your loss aversion is basically this concept that human beings are much more influenced by losing something than they are by gaining something. So the feeling of losing $50 is going to motivate you more than doing something to gain $100. And
which is, again, I hope that's like clicking for people, like sitting.
I know, I was going to say it again.
Just let that sink in for a second, because I think sometimes for biases, like it's very easy to just go through the world and not realize that you have biases. I think we got shared with that a long time ago. I think there's is it 12 or 25? Like there's some crazy big thing of there's all these biases that we have, and a lot of marketing and strategies and things that are used are actually geared and catered towards those biases to actually get you to move along and make decisions and actually go along when you're going through the process of purchasing something. Like Amazon is fantastic at playing with these, because it's they're going to confirm this for you because look at how many star ratings that this has. And they're going to also do this by, hey, look at the little bit of discount that you get here. Also, we're going to do this by the fact that you can get it now. Also, we're going to do this because there's only 3 left. Also, think of these things, these are biases that you can play on to get people to move into places. But sometimes it's the thing that affects you too when you're making decisions. Like you said, I'm more, again, I know that we don't like it, but it's really just how subconsciously we're programmed. It's much easier to find problems sometimes than it is solutions. I was listening to something the other day from Alex Hormozy, and he was like, I actually, whenever I'm trying to help a business, he's like, we don't look for solutions. He was like, we look for problems first, and then we find the opposite of whatever that is, and then we work to correct that, because that's actually helped us to be able to get there quicker rather than trying to come up with things that we don't know exist.
Yeah, that's a negative bias, right? And we're all kind of primed for that. If you make a social media post or you do something and you get one really great comment, you get like 7 or 10 really great comments, but you get one negative comment, automatically you think everything you did was shit and you're a piece of shit and you didn't help anybody because this one tiny person said something, and you automatically forget the 10 people that loved it. And so, so that's another bias. I think for loss aversion, how this plays into the sunk cost fallacy regarding our health is going to be really in the scenario that it puts us in a reactive situation versus a proactive situation. And we could be in you right now could be, your life could look like a dumpster fire, right? You could be like sitting in a dumpster fire full of symptoms that you are trying to figure out, but maybe we're just in a symptom management loop on the hamster wheel of, patching things up versus being able to actually figure out what's driving all the symptoms. Those are two very different things. And in being proactive versus reactive, your brain likes to keep you comfortable, right? So even though you're in a dumpster fire full of symptoms, there's comfort. It could be the worst thing in the world, but also there's this other side of the coin where your brain understands that there's predictability there. There's routine there. There's a comfort there. I know that you're not comfortable, but your brain likes routine and predictability. And so that's why it can be really hard to go into a growth phase, because it's uncomfortable, it's new, it's scary. Your body's going to be experiencing new things. You're going to be doing new things. You're going to be listening to new advice or whatever the case. And growth is really scary. Change is really scary for your brain. And so this loss aversion, we are primed to survive. We have a huge survival bias instinct, much more than gain and success. That's what's going to drive us. The fear, and the anxiety and the worry to stay alive, much more than let's go over there because that looks like a better pasture for, eating and planting roots or whatever the case. We'll just stay here in our little hidey hole because we'll stay safe until something literally forces you to move. So we end up in this in a very reactive state, where we're maybe not actually comfortable, but we are comfortable. And so that's kind of where this loss aversion, we don't want to lose what we already have, even though what we have may not actually be great, and we're not so motivated by the change. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. There's comfort in the fact of at least I know this. I may not like it, but I know what it is. It's like, I guess it's better than nothing, but it's this, but it's like, well, what if this is over here? Like, it's this weird just dilemma that we get into in our brains. And there's one more that I want to get into, which is actually confirmation bias, which I think actually goes to one of our previous episodes. But before that, I want to make sure that we acknowledge and talk about the sponsor of today's episode. I obviously am a massive fan of Every Plate. I know that's been the case for you lately, especially with Georgia.
Yes, with Georgia especially, Every Plate has come in. It's been such a staple in our household, especially lately, because she's eating more food too. And so we've got a higher serving size, which I love because, again, it always comes pre-portioned. I'm saving money in the grocery store because of that. So not only is Every Plate the least expensive meal kit you can get on the market, it's the least expensive versus all the others. So not only am I saving money there, but I'm actually saving money versus using Every Plate versus having to go grocery shopping. And things come pre-proportioned, which is, I think, one of my favorite things because it saves me time, and it saves my grocery bill right there too, because I use every single thing that comes. And Georgia's eating what we eat. And so I can also, they have the filters so I can choose what kind of lifestyle diet we're on. They have a new one called, I think it's called Nutrition Delish, and it's like low calorie meals. So if that's an objective for you, or you're really trying to count your macros or something like that, you can put these filters on there. So it just shows you the recipes that fit whatever kind of lifestyle you're trying to accomplish. And so it has serious variety, of course, saves me time. And I think my favorite thing of, my husband's favorite thing is it saves us a lot of money, especially right now with how high grocery bills have become.
I'm not sure when this episode's going to go out, but recently here in Texas, we had a really, really bad ice storm, snowstorm, whatever you want to call it, that basically froze all the roads over. Nobody could go anywhere. Like, if you know anything about Texas, when that happens, it shuts us down because we have no options for, clearing it out or doing anything because it doesn't happen often enough. So for us, there's no Uber Eats, there's no DoorDash, there's no, hey, let me order this and go pick it up. Like, nothing is open. We didn't have the ability.
The grocery stores were closed because nobody could get there.
Yeah, I was about to say ours were, fortunately, some of them were open and we were able to sneak out and kind of get to some places if we needed to. But we were very fortunate that we had meals that came and we were set up basically where it was like, okay, we have this stuff already in the fridge that we can work with. But it's like, now we already know that we have 4 meals already laid out. We're good. Because, there's a lot of times at the end of the day, I just don't want to have to think about that.
We would love for y'all to experience this with us, save you money, save you time, and get you healthy meals. So you can get started with Every Plate for just $1.49 per meal by going to everyplate.com/podcast and entering the code crackmeup149. So one more time, get $1.49 per meal. That's $1.49 per meal by going to everyplate.com/podcast and entering code crackmeup149.
Exactly. And that is up to $110 value. So don't forget, guys, if you want to get started with Every Plate for just $1.49 per meal, go to everyplate.com/podcast, enter in our code crackmeup149, and they'll get you all set up. Okay, awesome. Let's get into, I just want to talk about, because we were talking about these biases, it made me look it up. It's why I was on my phone just a second ago. There's also a thing called confirmation bias. So confirmation bias, if you look at the definition, basically is a tendency for people to favor information that confirms or strengthens their beliefs and values and is difficult to dislodge once affirmed. So think about this from the place where you struggle with a chronic health issue. You've been searching everywhere for an answer. And we talked about this on a previous. I want a label. Can you tell me what this is? Can you tell me the name of it so that I know, so then we can have a plan of attack? Well, if nobody's been able to give you an answer and all of a sudden somebody does, and and again, maybe you've done some research and you're like, I think it's hemiplegic migraines. And this person goes, hey, that's probably hemiplegic migraines. And you're like, boom, I knew it. That's exactly what it was. Now we have a confirmation bias there potentially, especially if it's like, well, what the hell do we do from here? Like, no offense. I know you want the name and we want to be able to have that stuff, but then what do we do from there? Like, what's the goal? And you also have to understand, I've been talking to a lot of my patients about this lately. It's very rare that you only have one type of migraine. Most, again, types of migraine is to actually distinguish between different types of symptoms that you experience. So migraine, again, is a very base neurological that we can look at of headache, visual disturbances, light and sound sensitivity, maybe nausea and vomiting. But you can have a lot of other stuff that comes with that. And if we have digestive issues and abdominal problems and pain, then it's an abdominal migraine. And if we get numbness down one side of our body that mimics a stroke, then it's hemiplegic. And if it comes on without me ever really feeling anything and I get these visual things, it could be a silent, or I can have migraine with aura. Like,
again, refer to last episode. Yes. Diagnosis is a description, not an explanation.
Exactly. So that's why I wanted to bring that up, because I think it cues back. If this is the first episode that you're listening to, make sure you go check that one out too, because these are more biases that can work really against you. Because if that's the first person to ever acknowledge that, then do you think that even if they're not helping you get where you want to go, you're like, but this was the first person to figure this thing out. Or this was the first person to help me put a label on it or a name on it or to help me do something. So there's the ability to go, boom, I knew I liked you. You confirmed exactly where I was. But that's not necessarily always a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that goes into, points to help us fight back against sunk cost fallacy is going to be, especially, this confirmation bias. We see that everywhere. It's definitely in play today in politics, religion, healthcare, friendships, echo chambers, we really don't like to hear dissenting opinions. And in fact, when we do, it's sometimes called like violence, or, you know, you get offended so easily. Everybody gets so offended today. And I think that's really our confirmation biases are kind of being told that they're kind of running the show, when in fact it can get us into big trouble. Because if we're trying to do something different and we're going somewhere that is, we're only agreeing with the advice that we get, if we already knew what we needed, we'd be doing it and we'd be better. Right?
Exactly.
And so if we're going to get the same advice and we're only using the advice that we agree with, or that makes sense, and we're not being challenged in a state where we can be open to receiving information, and maybe not necessarily, you know, following it or taking action on it or whatever the case, but just listening to it and then filtering it through our own mind and seeing if it aligns or does not align, then we can really be hurting ourselves. Some of the best advice is counterintuitive. And I think that's where it becomes really important to make sure you're getting care from a healthcare provider that you philosophically agree with. You know, if you're wanting to find the root cause of something, then we have to make sure our healthcare team has that mindset, that they're not just there to patch up symptoms, because then you can trust them. You can tell them, like we talked about earlier in this episode, hey, I don't really understand. I don't think this is working. Can you talk me through this again?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and you won't be scared to ask questions, because the trust is there. You know that you're in good hands, that this person you're paying has your best interest at heart, so that when you do receive advice that may not feel so good, it may be counterintuitive, meaning you're like, wait, this is like the opposite of what I thought. But you trust that person, so you are open to receiving that information, and then maybe even you try it.
Yeah, what a thought process. So you laid out so many things there, and I want to give some examples because you brought up some stuff that I've just, like most things, I've been talking about lately. So again, the first thing that you laid out that I just want to like elaborate on a little bit is you were talking about we live in a lot of confirmation bias. And I think by that I would say that if Alex came out and claimed a certain label, whether it was political, religious, where she lives, where she, like certain things, you would go, boom, that means you're this. And there would be subcategories that fall underneath that. And it's like, so because you believe this, then you have to believe all these things too.
Let's go into it. Let's just say, let's talk about politics just for a second, not to get into it, but just like, if I'm a Republican, if I say I'm a Republican, that means I love Trump. I hate gay people. I'm racist. Yes. I'm a transphobic person. I'm a Christian. I own guns. I hate immigrants. And if if I come out and say I'm a Democrat, that means I love Biden. I voted for Hillary. I think the gender ideology is great. I wear a mask. I'm still masking. I'm still in support of COVID restrictions. All like the laundry list of things. Yeah.
About taxation and,
yes. Open borders and
it's all these things that we do. And again, she nailed it, because we can say it and immediately you go down that route when it comes to that. But the problem is when you throw things into a box, you don't know that everything in that box belongs to that person. Like I describe this as me all the time. There's nothing about me that falls perfectly into every single box when it comes to that. It's why I don't relate to those things. I think we label people with extremes when that doesn't need to be the case. But the second thing that you nailed is, hey, instead of going immediately to our biases, which actually can hinder even our growth and going in the right direction and maybe even getting the results that we're looking for, and again, ask questions. I got no problem with that, but just to immediately be like, I can't do that, and this is why. Like, there's just these immediate things that we do rather than take it in, process it, think about it, filter it. Because you know me, I am a massive advocate of cold exposure. And guess what? So is everyone else now.
Right.
I don't know if he's a doctor. Andrew Huberman, it is one of his amplifiers that he talks about. And I love that term now. I've started using it as an amplifier.
I like that too.
Because I don't like hack, but amplifier is like, hey, it takes what you have here and can amplify it. So I am a massive fan of cold exposure because of the amount of people's lives that I've watched it change who have never been patients of mine. They've never come into my office. They've never gotten scanned by me. They've never been on my table. They've never been adjusted by me. They never had any of that. But the stuff that I recommend and I talk about has radically changed their lives, and they're migraine free, and they do it. Mel Tucker, if she's listening, I don't know if she listens to this. She's one of my followers on TikTok, and she's been very good. She's done like over 30 days of cold exposure, and she lives somewhere that's cold, and she started with cold showers, and she started to get some relief because she was having chronic migraines that were getting worse and worse and worse, and nothing was working. She found me. She got my book, decided that she was going to do the cold exposure chapter, which is chapter 3 in there. And she was like, okay, I'm going to do this. So started doing it, noticed changes. The changes were strong enough that she went out and bought one of the big horse troughs, like I have, the big metal horse trough, fills it up with, and she cold plunges every day. And she goes anywhere from, like, she's been doing this so long, she can go anywhere from like 5 to 10 minutes, which is amazing. Like doing a 10-minute plunge, it's amazing. But she's had days where I think she went from 25 migraine days a month down to 5. Just doing this, not changing anything else, and not having to rely on her medication as much anymore. And it's even helped abort some of her migraines when they've been coming on. She was like, came home, jumped in the cold plunge. She's been doing the dunk in her head too. She's like, first time I dunked my head, didn't really do anything. Second time started to have some relief. Third time dunked my head, and I felt like almost like literally a new person whenever I came out of the water. Now, she has a confirmation bias actually towards this because I told her this, she tried it, and now she knows that it works because the results were there. But I will share stuff like this and I will talk about it and all the comments that come at me, because I know when you struggle with migraine, you struggle with other issues too. You have other labels, other problems. You have Raynaud's, you have fibromyalgia, you have, certain issues.
Hormone dysfunction, thyroid, hypothyroid.
I can't do that. I can't get cold. It would be so much worse. Oh my gosh, when I get cold, I do this. And then I start asking questions to just try to break that down a little bit of like, okay, well, can you explain to me what you did? And have you tried this? And how frequently? Because to be honest with you, trying something once and then being like, this was this and that's it, like, that's not enough for anything in order to do that. Like, it's not I'm not sitting here saying like, hey, this is an easy, quick fix. You only have to do it once and it'll change everything. No, unfortunately, this is just like eating. You're probably going to have to eat every day. Maybe every other day. You can go on a fast, but eventually you're going to need some food. Hey, in about 10 to 60 seconds, you're going to need another breath. There's not like, hey, I've breathed enough air, I'm kind of done with that, I don't need that anymore. And I know everybody listening is laughing right now. You think that's funny, but I'm like, these things are true when it comes to that as well. You need these things to amplify what it is that you're doing. And you have to understand that they're going to start to make your nervous system more resilient and heal it. There's so many physiological effects that happen in there. One of the biggest ones being your relaxation cocktail, your dopamine, norepinephrine, epinephrine. They go up massively after you've done a cold plunge, which will help with a ton of things inside of your body. So you have to understand that, yes, I know, but here's what I would say for someone who has fibromyalgia, if they're listening. You're already in pain. I know that the cold will make the pain worse. I know that, but you're already in constant pain all the time. So what the hell do we have to lose other than the fact that you might not be in pain? We might strengthen the resilience of your nervous system, and the pain that all the time might actually start to go away and improve. What would happen then? Raynaud's, get that one all the time. Oh, I got Raynaud's, I have circulatory issues. Well, that's also a neurological problem. We're having circulatory problems where we can't regulate the opening and closing of your blood vessels, and you're having literally blood vessels on your fingers closed down.
This is both.
I don't have any Raynaud's specific stories, so I can't tell you that that would work. But me knowing how the body functions, if you strengthen and improve the resilience of your nervous system, I know that this will create those changes. And cold, I've seen just do it the fastest and with the shortest amount of time. I've got tons of other things that you could do as well. It doesn't just have to be that one thing, but don't just delete something because it goes against a bias that you potentially have.
Yes. And Raynaud's, we know that there's more to it than just your fingers and your toes get cold, right? Your fingers get cold.
Not a finger problem.
And right. And with the fibromyalgia, that, like the example you just gave, that's confirmation bias is what you were talking about, but that's also very much loss aversion. You were saying you're already in pain all the time, so what do you have to lose? That's like literally loss aversion at play. The difference between being proactive and reactive. I'm comfortable in my pain because I know how to manage it. I know how to predict it, and I might be scared that it gets worse, but will it though? Are you really scared it'll get worse if you're already in pain? And if you are scared it'll get worse, that's like I would really rather not lose $50 than make 100. So that's what that is. I don't want it to get worse, even though I know it could get better. Everything that you're saying makes sense. I'm not in that desperation point yet to where I need to go out of my cave and find the new greener pastures or the food, So it's like
which is why the return needs to be big enough. Like people are more than willing to throw down $20 to try to win $1 billion in the lottery.
Yes.
You're losing that $20. When was the last time that had any return? Let's total up all the times that we've thrown that money into that. And again, you may be like, I've never done that, and I wouldn't. It's like I've done that 5 times in my life total.
And that threshold is very unique to the individual, right? Somebody spending $5 is somebody else spending $100. So whatever that is, like that's unique to you. And that goes into, so we were talking about one of my points to kind of combat the sunk cost fallacy and letting past choices dictate future choices is not only to make sure you're aligned with a healthcare provider that you can trust so that you can receive counterintuitive advice and potentially, filter that through and then take action on it, which is what we're talking about right now. It might not feel good in the moment, but health is supposed to have a compounding ROI. If we're a return on investment, right? So if we are letting all of our biases, all of this background circuitry run the show, and we're not ever questioning any of it, we just end up in a place where we don't really know how we got there. We know that we have less money, less time, and either the same health or worse health. But if we're doing things right, health has a compounding return on investment. When we're doing things consistently and aligned with what we as unique individuals need, which looks a little bit different for everybody, it's not just like you have a good day. Everything gets better. Your body starts functioning better, which has effects not only on your physical health, but your personal relationships with yourself, with other people, in your job, the type of person you are, the type of character you have. That's why health is compounding. It doesn't just affect your physical quality of life and your longevity. It impacts who you are, your entire reality as a person, because your nervous system is what makes your reality. And so if our nervous system is not healthy, it will affect not just our body, but how our reality looks, how we interact with the world around us and the people around us and ourselves, which is why this matters so much.
Yes. I also want to, again, I wanted to let you go because that was fantastic. I also want to make sure that we don't let previous conditioning affect the fact that there could be something that's perfect and right in front of you and an opportunity, and you don't take advantage based on an experience that you've had previously, which must mean all of these are like this.
Generalizing.
Like this? Yes.
Yeah.
Because one of these are like this, all of them must be like this.
Because one dude broke my heart, all of them are assholes.
Yep.
They're all pigs.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like, think of these things that we have in our mind. A penny saved is a penny. Like, think of these actual
so many.
And are they yours? Like, there are so many phrases that you can say that you don't.
Money's hard to make.
Yep. Money doesn't grow on trees.
Yep.
Well, money's actually made of paper, and money technically actually and not in paper form doesn't even exist. Like, that's one of the things.
Money's actually,
and it's like a spiritual, it's like an energy.
It's energetic. I know.
It doesn't exist. Like,
money's in the cloud right now. You wire it.
I remember our coach Sean explaining this. Like, when money is made, like when we talk about printing more money, he's like, we're not actually printing more money. We just have an account and we go, this account now has this much in it, and we're distributing it to people through SBA or through whatever, and this is how we're doing it. And then all of a sudden, your account has this, and they go, "Oh, you've qualified." Boom, there it is. Yep. They didn't actually physically hand that to you.
You didn't get like a little bag of gold that you got to go bury in the backyard, right?
Get the bag. Anyway, sorry. Before we get too far,
I digress.
And it would just give them some like tangible things that they could do.
Well, the other point is other tangible is to keep track of the metrics. This is what you were talking about this earlier in the episode, and I was like, I want to talk about the trajectory of how you know something is working. We can only know if something's working is if we're measuring it. Because the whole point of what we're talking about and how all of these work against us is that they play on our emotions. They play on our feelings. And so when we make a decision, especially a big one, that is driven way more by our emotions than by logic. Even because in the face of, if everything is equal and logically we should do this, but emotionally we don't feel good about it, guess which one wins? Emotions. Very rarely will we make that's why business is, it's not personal, it's business, right? You hear that's phrases like that. And but it's like
together. I think they're always married.
Exactly. Which is why these are so hard to sort through. And it's also why it's so important to actually have data, to actually have things we can use. So like this is where wearables become really effective. Wearing a Whoop, wearing an Aura ring, wearing a Fitbit, even wear a dang Apple Watch. I don't care. But like having something that can measure the state, to just take screenshots of where we're at now and then be able to measure where we're going, because every single day things go up and down, but we need something to measure the trajectory, if we're trying to lose weight, we're taking our weight every single day, but we're taking the average every single week. And that's the number we use, right? Because things go up and down. And so if we're using actual health metrics, actual money spent, we can actually sit down and put the numbers together. We can actually sit down and look at how much time we've invested. We're keeping a journal, we're keeping track of things, whatever the case, we can really only make decisions and get out of this when we're using real numbers, because math doesn't lie.
Well, is your provider giving you metrics that actually make sense? Like, do we have a way to actually measure to know what we're doing? Like, these are questions that you need to ask.
Yes. Or is it constantly, how do you feel on a scale of 1 to 10? Exactly. Because that is not an accurate health metric. That is, completely subjective. We need objective health metrics, which is you could be feeling like shit, but your HRV looks good.
And that is possible. Like, I know there's not a core, like that doesn't make sense to the way that people view the world and look at it. But know that when doctors take notes, we have what's called a subjective. So we have a SOAP note. We have a subjective, the S. We have the objective. What did you do? What testing did you use? What way did you use to measure this to know that we had an objective change? Then we have the assessment and plan of what it is that we're doing. But the problem is if we're only going by how you feeling today and what's going, like if I just did that with my patients in here, then you're kind of flying by the seat of your pants, not really knowing. Like, one of the things, anytime I do sit down and talk with people, they do start doing cold exposure. I'm like, I want you to write down where we're at right now, how frequently, what it is that's going on. Because again, it only takes one flare for you to feel like you've lost all the,
right.
It only takes one time and you feel like I knew it. I knew this is, I'm not going to be able to, I knew there was something up with this. And it's like, that's not the case. And I typically will let my patients know, don't be discouraged if we have a migraine flare. If we have something come up, that's okay. This is a part of the healing journey that we're on. But when we go from 25 days down to 5 days, and those 5 days we're at a 5 as opposed to a 9 or a 10 or a 12, that is a drastic difference. Like, that's one of the things, again, you talk about knowing stats, like I've tried to get into those. Last year, it actually improved. In 2021, I think it was like 82% of our patients noticed a decrease in the frequency and intensity of their migraines within the first 30 days. Now it's about 85%, and it's within the first 14 days was last year. So you're talking about
that's amazing.
Migraine free, but it's, hey, within the first 2 weeks of starting with us, people are noticing a decrease in the frequency, how often they're having migraines, and how intense they are. Nothing else out there can really offer that. And you're sitting here, how did you know? I got to go through all the notes and look at them. What did this patient say? What did we look at this? And you look at those and you start totaling all that up. Because to me, to be honest with you, I'm not a statistics person. I'm not that, like, I don't care about that. I feel like healthy things grow and they go where they want. Like, I'm not a spreadsheets person. I'm not somebody that's like that. But I know that there's people out there that need to know that information and want to know. But, we have a friend of ours, Lauren Clum. I don't know if she listens to this, and hopefully she's okay with me sharing this. But when she was dating, she was like, I don't think this is going well. And then she started doing stats on the dates.
She did.
How many guys have I matched with through these profiles, or how many guys have I met? How many dates did we go on? How would I rate those dates? Like, she's very much into stats. So she liked to look at all the things, and she was like,
She also does this with
than I thought.
She also does this with the best old fashioned at every restaurant she goes to.
She has a ranking system for the drink, the old fashioned. She has like this whole thing. It's all the time. But you have to have ways that you look at this. So know as you're going through these things, hey, let's have a plan. And like Alex said, I would say that it needs both. Like, do I trust this person? Does it make logical sense? And emotionally, do I get the vibe? Do I get the energy that this is where I'm trying to go?
They absolutely both need to be there in order to make a truly aligned decision for yourself. Because again, we are all unique people. What works for one is not necessarily going to work for the other. We know, like, based on Brandon's stats that he just shared with us, which are friggin' phenomenal, you know, the 85% of people that start with him notice a huge change within the first 2 weeks. Well, you know, 8.5 out of 10 people notice a big difference, right? And so you'll probably notice a difference. May you be the one that doesn't? Could be, but that doesn't mean we're not going to get. That doesn't mean you're not in the right place. That trajectory just looks different for you, and we may switch things up in your lifestyle in order to get better, faster, more effective results, or whatever the case, right? And so,
I'll tell you what I tell all my patients. Here's their loss aversion that I play to them. So again, yes, we talk to you about these things, but I also know these things when working with people. I tell every single person, if you will follow all my recommendations, again, this is like, we're not like, I came in 3 times and I missed a bunch of appointments and I did all this stuff. And I'm like, that's not the agreement that we made. If you will follow my recommendations, you show up to your appointments, we go through everything, and we're 3 months in and we have had 0 changes and you don't feel like this is any better, I will literally give you all of the money back.
Yes.
So far.
Yeah.
You can have it. And again, I feel comfortable offering that. I've had to do it in the entire time of my office being open and implementing it one time. And it was because, again, I can get into the whole story, but
you don't need to get into the story. One time out of all of that is
basically, well, when they came in, they were in full blown flare up mode, and everything that I explained just did not make sense at all. Like, it was just like, I heard you're the guy, you can get me out of pain immediately. Get me out of pain immediately. I was like, hey, that's not necessarily going to be the case. This is what's going on. They weren't willing to work with me over that amount of time. And I was like, you know what? I just don't feel like this is the right thing for you right now. Our door will always be open. You are always welcome back. But I just did that.
Yeah.
But I'm sitting there showing you, I'm telling you about the stats, and I'm telling you about what's going on. Like, it's very rare that we have someone that is not happy with the service that they get with us. That should be the experience that you're getting when it comes to your health with whoever you work with. You should be like, hell yeah, Dr. Alex is my girl, not guy. It's not a boy. It's that she's the person who takes care of me. Like, and you know, you have patients that are like this. Like, they just go to you and it's like,
for sure,
they ask you questions about probably some of the most random things because they trust you on such a deep level with something that was so important to them. So know and have that, be able to look at those things and have a plan. Listen, you may not go to a chiropractor. You may not even want to go to a chiropractor that works like Alex and I do. That's very specific and focused. That doesn't touch any other areas, but only focuses on the integrity of your upper cervical spine and the health and function of your nervous system. But they need to have a plan. Hey, just start coming in 3 times a week and we'll figure it out. That's not going to work for me.
A plan.
What are we doing?
Objective plan. They need to be able to tell you what they're doing and how they know if it's working or not.
Exactly. How will we know if this is working? And what are we going to do if that's like, we need to be able to know these things, and you need to be able to ask these things. Like,
and that's not just a
biases of people. Yeah.
Not just a chiropractor.
People. You do it.
No, I was just going to say that's not just a chiropractor. That's any doctor in any scenario, in any friggin', you hire somebody to do construction on your house. I don't know. Like, how do we know that this is going the way that it's supposed to be going? How do we know we're going to stay on budget? How do we know?
Home is built correctly. We have a home inspector that comes through and looks at all this.
Exactly.
Go through this. They're like, we have no idea how this house got approved. Like, we're going to have to read it. And then it's like, oh my gosh. Man, how does that stuff happen?
This is how we take care of our nervous systems, is by making sure we are staying aligned with the decisions logically and emotionally. And the way we do that is by asking the right questions so that we know we're on the right trajectory.
Exactly. And know that with that, we are on your side when it comes to that. I can feel
I
it
have,
too. Everybody
I
just
have,
take a deep breath and just go, it's going to be okay.
I also have one more point.
Okay. I was just got one
It's
more
it's
point.
fast. Okay, this is the biggest one, and it goes. That's good. We took a deep breath.
Okay.
We can say, take another deep breath because we can embody this one.
See, don't you feel better? I do.
You have permission to change your mind, to change your team, to change your path, to change absolutely everything when you learn new information. You don't have to keep doing what you're doing. You have all the permission in the world to do something that is more aligned with you. And that doesn't mean you're a hypocrite. That just means you're growing. And if we're not growing, then what are we doing?
It's a good question. We're not going in the direction that we want. So
Yeah.
I got nothing else to add. She nailed it there. When new information comes along, you have absolutely every right to change it. You're bringing back concepts from like very early on season 1 of You Crack Me Up episodes where we've talked about stuff like that.
It's necessary.
I now have new information, and so because of that information, this is now where I'm going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
The map
because
told me I was traveling south. I was trying to get north. Now, based on that information, I must make a U-turn at the next turn in order to be going in the right direction.
mm-hmm.
I didn't know where I was going.
And some people may say may have stuff to say. You may get some haters. It may be really hard. You may have to put up some boundaries. It may feel awkward and clunky. At the end of the day, you're doing what you need to do for you, and nobody can live your life but you.
I think we should make an episode on that about boundaries. That's good. I've talked about that some lately too.
Let's do it.
As a person who has just learned how to put up boundaries and is new at that, I would love to do an episode on that. So,
well, stay tuned for an episode on boundaries. That's all I got, though.
Thanks for coming to hang out. I love it. I thought this was a great episode. If you guys found any value in this or felt like there's somebody that you want to share this with, please share this with somebody that you know. And please leave us a review with any feedback. If you've got questions, again, we do this for you guys. So give us any feedback, any topics, any stuff that you'd love for us to talk about. That is exactly what we're here for. Alex, where can they do that?
You can do that on youcrackmeuppodcast.com on the interwebs.
Yep, you can send us requests there, or you could just go to anywhere you listen to podcasts, Spotify, Apple, Buzzsprout, whatever it is. I don't even know if they're on that.
What? Go to Spotify or Apple, like a normal person.
Buzzsprout the other day, and that's where that came from. But, you know, just again, Spotify and Apple is going to be the place to get it. Come on now. You know that's where you're going to go. Okay, bye.